During Her Majesty's Diamond Jubilee Legacy Fund, we set up a fund really for the local area, for East Oxford. And our idea was to get different groups working together to address a particular need. So one of the criteria for that fund was to have people from across different cultures and faiths work together on a relevant project. So what we've tried to do is support people involved in homelessness, mental health, young people in the area. So recently we've been supporting the Eid extravaganza, the Grand Iftar. There's also other groups such as Oxford Community Action, who I really advocate their work simply because they're targeting groups of families right now who culturally would not want to be seen as if they're seeking a handout, as it were. So what they're doing is they're saying, look, you know, this is not a handout, it's there to really support you and help you at a difficult time. And so they're delivering up to about 200 food parcels a day. That's what they've been doing for the last month or so. We've also had the Central Oxford Mosque, I think, play a very important role in terms of working with the City Council, the East Oxford Community Hub, to deliver, again, food parcels, to go and collect possibly prescriptions for people who are self-isolating or the elderly. So really working together with other partners to address a need in the local community. You know, the logistics of actually having the food cooked and then having it packaged and delivered, just a great, terrific work. The Eid extravaganza just very recently, there's also been events at Restore, which is also on Mansell Way, which is near the Central Oxford Mosque, supporting people with mental illness. The Central Oxford Mosque has had a terrific initiative going, supporting people who are disadvantaged, people who are homeless, especially the communities that are difficult to reach. So they've been able to do that with a number of partners. So it's been difficult, but it's been what's really struck me is how people have actually come together to ensure that those who are disadvantaged, whether it's the homeless or others, that they're taken care of.
Have you had many extra volunteers who just come out of the woodwork who have now joined forces with everybody else?
Yeah, what struck me is the amount of the younger group of people coming forward to volunteer. You know, it's a huge, massive logistical operation, but we've had people who probably have volunteered maybe for the first time. You know, it's their first experience of volunteering simply because they just felt that, you know, they're healthy, they're young, they've got the energy, especially during Ramadan. You know, people have been fasting and still preparing meals and delivering them, which really, you know, without a meal, without any water and stuff, having the energy to go and deliver, that's really something quite special. So we've had lots of new volunteers who've joined forces. So that's been a really positive in this difficult situation.
That's wonderful. And the food, the meals you mentioned, is that carrying on, or? Well,
that's a very good question, because we've got, Jayne will know, we've got this local fund, the COVID-19, East Oxford COVID-19 Fund, to support that work. And I've had one group that I've been supporting, the Oxford Community Action Group, local group. They've been reaching out to the Somali community, the Sudanese, the people who, you know, just culturally, they just find it very difficult to ask, because it's just, you know, they just, it's just demeaning. So this particular group is focusing on them, and I've put my name behind and with them to support their effort. And so we're trying to raise money for them at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you know, that's a difficult part. I mean, there's a lot of willingness to go out and help, but just support, financial support, really, and that's what the fund is there for locally for East Oxford.
So your grant from OCF is really making a difference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and I think these new groups of people who are coming through, they're much younger, and I think they're the people certainly, you know, we want to be supporting and ensuring that we give them a lending hand. So they've got the energy, they've got the motivation, they just need some financial support, and that's what we're trying to do with Jayne as well.
I hear that you know, there are a number of students who will be deferring their university entrance, so there might be a much bigger group of young who have got a sort of year in hand actually going forward. It'd be really interesting to see what sort of movement perhaps could be engineered to one needs money to be able to pay them, but like you say, they're people who actually would love to help and have got the energy and
well, they gain so much, you see. I mean, we've had volunteering projects, students volunteering to come to the mosque to teach young people in the mosque maths and English, you know, just basic subjects. Now that interaction, they get to know more about the young people and their lives, their culture, their faith, and it also enables them, I think they pick up skills through that act of volunteering, which otherwise they may not do. And so they go back, you know, whichever career they go back to. I think it just gives them those extra skills that they otherwise might not have. And I think that's the other thing about the fund locally in East Oxford. It really is about getting people to work together across cultures and faiths and so on to address a common need. And through that process, they build up strong relationships. You know, people get to know each other. And when they get to know each other, friendships are built and developed. And so I think that's a really positive and important thing in all of this, that we want people also to be working together so we have stronger communities at the grassroots level, which kind of grow out.
Very much. That was very much the focus. It was going to be the focus of my year, as you know. So.
Well, I'm going to try and continue that, Amanda.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I would love to come to East Oxford when I'm allowed out of prison, and I'd love to come and meet some of the amazing people who've been doing things with you, and if I may. So,
yeah. Can I also just say that on this coming Sunday, we've organised a global Eid celebration. So we've got the likes of Radiohead, the likes of big stars joining us from different parts of the world. And we're going to go live on YouTube and Facebook. So both the Oxford Foundation channels. So do join us if you're free from 2 onwards. It's going to be a bit of a marathon, but we've got a really good selection of different people, different musicians, hopefully going to really bring some joy to our lives and our homes at this difficult time.
So we might have singing in the streets.
Yeah, well, you might, you know, you're welcome to do a song online because you are going to join us. So
I am going to join you. I'm going to join you, but I'll have to sort of ask my husband to do that because my whole family say I have the worst voice. I love singing, but I can only do it by myself.
That makes 2 of us then.
Brilliant. Monawar, that's absolutely brilliant. There have been a few messages in the chat. Could you share a link to where people might be able to get online via YouTube to the event?
Sure.
That would be absolutely fantastic because it's brilliant.
Sure.
But so it's so good to hear you, and I think Amanda will say lots going on in East Oxford. It's always encouraging.
Thank you.
So probably now, Amanda, should we move on to Kat Horne from Gatehouse?
Absolutely.
So Kat should be with us.
Try and see Kat.
Kat. Yeah.
It's either my internet or my laptop's got too hot. So
okay, we can hear you, Kat. We can definitely hear you.
So I don't cut out. I'll shut the video off if that's okay.
You can't see me now, Amanda.
No, I can't. Right.
Sorry.
Hello, Kat.
Hello.
Well, I hope we will meet. Please do tell me, you're normally based in St Giles, is that right?
That's right. Yes, yes. Would you like me to tell you, just give you an overview of the project?
I would love you to. Yes, please.
Okay, so I'll do before COVID-19. The Gatehouse is a community drop-in centre which offers free support services for adults who are homeless, vulnerably housed, on low income, and or looking for company and community. We're largely donation reliant and volunteer led. We offer a free cafe 6 evenings a week, therapeutic workshops and different activities, a one-to-one casework team that works with people on individual issues to support them to reduce barriers and move on in areas of their life that they want to or need to. We were delivering an outreach service to try and raise awareness of the service for any new rough sleepers. And historically, I attended the Oxford Homeless Movement pod meetings, and I now sit on the Oxford Homeless Movement steering group, largely, I think, to represent lived experience. The Gatehouse has quite a strong staffing model of people that, including myself, that used to use services. We have also staff and users of the project also sitting on the Lived Experience Advisory Forum, which was embraced and is supported by the Oxford Homeless Movement. Yes, so we're largely volunteer and donation led, whether that be of time. Before we closed, we had 400 volunteers.
Wow.
Yes, that was funds, yeah,
incredible.
Food or clothing, and we were averaging approximately 162 individuals using the service across 1 week before the building in itself had to close due to COVID-19.
What, I mean, have you had any thoughts of how, if it, having not been there, I can't quite imagine what sort of room or place it is, but if you are allowed to open, will you need money to make changes to the space to provide the service that you were giving before?
Yes, yes. I mean, we're still operating currently under a new model, and the OCF fund has enabled us to do that. So what we're doing currently is delivering food and drink provision to the vulnerably housed. Also, we're working remotely one-to-one with those individuals, and we're supporting them on a range of emotional or practical problems with phone top-up and IT access, so that they're not so isolated and so that they can also remain in contact with other people and services. We've also been working in partnership with Oxford Homeless Movement in being able to supply practical provision to the rough sleepers that have been temporarily housed in hotels and B&Bs, which can include clothing and toiletries. What we're looking at now is how we move forward health and safety wise to enable the delivery service to continue, the one-to-one remote support to continue, but also a takeaway to be developed. So there's lots of, yes, health and safety changes that we're going to have to put in place, because it was a really big, we have a really big open space building and garden. So the social distance element is obviously a challenge for everybody.
And the people you, the individuals you help, are they, I mean, do you have some that come every evening, or do some come every day, or do some just come from time to time, or how?
Yeah, a complete range of all of those things. And I think before we close, when I started with the project 5 or 6 years ago, I think we were looking at rough sleepers numbers sort of being 70% of what we would usually have worked with. Now, I'd say a third are rough sleepers, a third are vulnerably housed, and a third are isolated and really enjoy the community element, which I think everybody is missing.
I wonder, I've been my lunch club in the village, so I've been taking some meals around there. And actually, just before it started, I just went and bought Tupperware dishes for the lunch club members. And actually, it's worked very well that I cook the meal, put it in the Tupperware, they have it, and then I go around and pick them up, put them in the dishwasher. They've already washed them, but they'll wash again, and then they go out again.
Yes.
Presumably that's the sort of thing that you would be able to take forward.
Absolutely. We've got ways that we can deliver the food provision as a takeaway safely.
Without being too endless, throwing away sort of.
Yes, endless amounts of, and creating endless amounts of waste. So yes, we're aiming to hopefully, under government guidance and following that work alongside the current delivery service, hopefully mid-June.
So you would you keep up some deliveries as well? I mean, looking forward, what you've sort of learnt from having to change what you do, might you keep up the cafe and still do some deliveries, or would you just go back to the cafe?
It would certainly be the plan for the unforeseeable future to do both, so that we're not promoting large gatherings. One, that we do know that people that we're working with and that we're in contact with regularly anyway have one form of provision, and then people that aren't vulnerably housed and do need a takeaway service can also use that. So it's staggering. We're looking at staggering how many people congregate or use different areas of the service, and also how we change operationally, because we used to have 15 volunteers on a night just to operate one session. We won't have that going back into it. So it's really changing our operational model practically as well.
All these things to think about. It's very hard, isn't it, to know, and the numbers of individuals using your service could well go up, I imagine.
Yes, I think out of this, some of the things that I've learned is that we can adapt and we can change. And although 50% of that is quite frightening, the other 50% of that makes it quite exciting. And it's given us a chance to review our strategy, to review our funding model, and to start planning on longer term resilience. Because
I bet your volunteers in some ways have enjoyed a new challenge and a change.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think change for anybody originally is quite difficult, isn't it? But we're trying to work as collaboratively as working remotely will allow you to do. And we hope to get back to some form of normal volunteer-led model at some point in the future.
Well, Kat, that sounds like you're doing a lot, and you did mention OHM quite a bit of the time. So perhaps for some people that aren't on the call, shall we just say that stands for the Oxford Homeless Movement, and it's a sort of coalition and collaboration of the 38 homeless charities that are working to support homeless people in the city and beyond. So I think it's really good to hear you saying that you are looking at changing your services, partnering with others. It's a really positive factor in what we would like the homeless movement to become.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's the strength of the Oxford Homeless Movement, actually, is the collaboration and the partnership working.
Fantastic. And we're going to be joined now, I think, by Paul Roberts from Aspire, another of the charities that you know very well working in the homeless space, and also Andy Edwards, who some of you will know from MakeSpace, but also a small social enterprise, Transition by Design. So they're going to be talking to Amanda now about housing and how we can perhaps take this opportunity to really move people on and off the street. So Paul and Andy.
Paul, I think we met briefly at Sylvia's party last year, and I've certainly your card has been on my desk. Actually, it was again one of the names quite high up on my list of people that I was going to contact very early on in my year. But anyway, it's great to have this chance to talk to you now. And Andy, I had a look at your website. And I thought, wow, look at all these things, and really looking forward to hearing the collaboration you are doing with Paul. So, but Paul, perhaps just tell me a little bit more about Aspire.
Sure, and thank you for the opportunity, Amanda. So Aspire is an employment charity which also delivers homelessness and housing support services, and also a social enterprise. So we have trading operations in the county as well. I'll focus on what we do around supporting people who are experiencing homelessness, and including ex-offenders coming into the community as well. So I think that's the area of greatest sort of interest for you.
Yeah.
So throughout, since the pandemic started, we've had our homelessness prevention service team working with people who are sort of in very precarious housing, trying to ensure that they can stay in those settings rather than find themselves evicted and falling into already overstretched services. So that's one thing we are focused on and want to grow, actually, is the prevention element of all of this. And we feel that's going to become more and more important in the months to come. So that's one side. We've also been working with the prison and probation service across the Thames Valley, identifying offenders who are coming to the end of their custody terms and are looking to come back out into the community, and then working with them to identify housing and employment and development support opportunities. So that's been a very busy part. And then we've been busy sort of repurposing ourselves across the board around being there digitally for people who can't engage with us in person. But we also do have a very committed team going into the hotel settings where there's about 150 people, as we've been discussing, who are in the hotels in central Oxford at the moment. So I've got 4 colleagues going in most days of the week to engage and to build relationships and understand what their needs are around being able to move on, and what their benefits and entitlements are, and working with the City Council and St Mungo's to see how can we progress from there.
Has that been easier? I mean, the fact that they're all together how have the homeless adapted to living in a hotel?
I think it's a very mixed experience, isn't it? I think it's given them the space and the physical comfort relatively, to not have to focus constantly on survival, and hopefully to build relationships and a bit more trust with services. So despite the crisis, this is an opportunity, and
it's been really valuable.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the bit we're focused on now. So we've been fortunate to benefit from grant awards from OCF, from the Resilience Fund. Part of that has been around emergency response. So we're spending about £2,000 to £3,000 a month on emergency personalisation funds. And then we've also been implementing Wi-Fi so that those in the Travel Lodge and Youth Hostel in Central Oxford can access more support and engagement. So that's been I guess a bigger element of our support has been around tackling the digital deficit than I had expected. So that's that. But the focus now, and through a grant award from the Oxford Homeless Movement, is now around how do we support people to progress from the hotel settings? How can we bring online new accommodation options, additional accommodation options? And that's by necessity has to be quite innovative. And this brings on the partnership with Transition by Design and through Makespace. So Aspire and Transition by Design have been two of the sort of founding members of Makespace and working together for some time, trying to bring back online empty and underused premises in the city for meanwhile community benefit. So typically, until now, it's focused on commercial empty properties, but we've now been able to engage with a landlord who has a number of blocks of empty residential properties in central Oxford, and we'll be taking on the lease. So Aspire will become the landlord of these HMO properties. We'll be working with Transition by Design to bring them up to a standard that enables people to move in and live somewhere as a home and as a place to get dedication, support, care, attention, and to stabilise and move on again. So we're genuinely excited about that opportunity.
That I agree. I think that's really exciting. I was thinking the other day about affordable housing and everything, and I'm just wondering how much affordable housing was built in Oxford anyway, and two, I was thinking, well, what was affordable housing maybe before the virus? Actually, is that going to be affordable housing afterwards? If people lose jobs or incomes or whatever, and I wondered, I suppose this is more of an architect's question, whether even when building projects have a building for affordable housing, whether they should even be incorporating, some proper bed sits, maybe the sort of thing that Andy's doing. I don't know what to, how do you link in with affordable housing things?
I'll say a little bit, but then Andy's definitely the expert on these sort of matters. I think there will be landlords who will be looking for new tenants in September, October, because their traditional tenants will not be coming back to the city, at least not immediately. So there again, that is a challenge for those landlords, but it's an opportunity as well to revisit perhaps as a group of adults and young people that perhaps they would have overlooked before, that maybe with the right level of reassurance and support, we can help broker new accommodation opportunities with the existing stock that's there, particularly as the Ministry of Housing has put up the local housing allowance rates at the moment. So I think there is some scope there that we need to explore quite quickly, but I think that's the one that we shouldn't ignore. But now I'll hand over to Andy to correct everything I've just said, which was a mistake.
Not at all. Thanks, Paul. Thank you, Jayne and Amanda. Lovely to be on the call. Real pleasure to be with you all and to hear more from Kat and Monawar about the fantastic work they're doing. So inspiring. For those who might not be so familiar, so I'm Andy Edwards. I'm one of the co-founders of Transition by Design Co-operative. So we're an architecture and design collective based here in Oxford, focused on what we call the kind of just transition towards a zero carbon society. We're rooted in and focused on the specific design challenges facing Oxfordshire, and we specialise in low impact architecture, community-led and truly affordable housing, so we can pick up a bit on that, and action research. And it's really that sort of intersection between architecture and action research that has led us to such a solid partnership with Aspire. So we're very focused on, when looking at housing and homelessness, the idea of co-production. So the idea and the fundamental importance of centering the voice of lived experience in the research that we do and in the kind of design solutions that we try and put forward. And obviously Aspire are one of the pioneers in that area, and so there's a very natural partnership that's evolved. So yeah, probably one of the most relevant things that we're working on at the moment is a 3-year action research project called Homemaker Oxford. And that's really looking at how alternative housing approaches, and what we mean by alternative is community-led, innovative and creative, so perhaps unlocking underused or vacant space, how those sort of new and interesting approaches can be best leveraged, utilised to respond to the current homelessness crisis that we're facing here in Oxford. And the current partnership around the new premises, which Paul mentioned, is just one of the latest kind of chapters in us testing some of the theories and learning that we've developed through that project.
Mm-hmm. And I know, Paul, on you, apart from sort of trying to find sort of somewhere for homeless people to live, you're doing your retraining and things. How many of your people that sort of you're helping would actually be able to help with a sort of adapting space, you know, a sort of building or learning building skills, I suppose, to help sort of create these areas?
I think that's something that's something that we definitely incorporate into the design of the project delivery and the journey. So at Aspire, just over half my workforce, so we employ just over 50 people at the moment, so over half of my colleagues have come from a lived experience background, including in the senior management team. So through Oxford Homeless Movement, we helped support the development of the Lived Experience Advisory Forum. So it's something we really do believe in, and we're trying to encourage as many other employers as possible to recruit candidates, as we term, who are ready for work opportunities. Once, you know, once, like anyone, they've received investment and opportunity, then they're ready to be really great employees. So the more that we can provide opportunities for people to get really practical work experience to build their self-confidence, this kind of project lends itself really well to that. So there's lots of different aspects of projects to get involved in, and that's what's so exciting about the Homemaker project as well. You know, it's really looking at every possible scope for opportunities to involve people, so they've got a voice as well as an opportunity to contribute.
Really amazing. So have you actually started adapting some premises?
So we've signed the lease on 3 blocks, which, when you bring it all together, is going to be about 35 to 40 rooms. So it's a considerable amount of space to bring online in time. And yeah, we're raring to go. So once we've completed on the lease, then we can start actually, you know, bringing in the pitchforks and doing some.
And is that, have you got the funds for that, or do you still need to fundraise for that, or?
Yeah, it's simultaneous. So we've got enough funds to get going and convert one of the blocks, and we're still assessing the full extent of the need for the 2 other blocks. So it's a case of we can and will bring them all online. It's just a case of how quickly can we accelerate it. So that's live, as perhaps you'd expect. But the opportunity there is to have these online until December 2022, when during this redevelopment phase. So there's this wonderful opportunity there to really provide this opportunity to really give intensive support and stable accommodation to people, and also to set an example to other landlords.
Yes, exactly. And the homeless who are in the hotels, I mean, the hotels aren't going to be back functioning properly, I imagine, for a bit. So is there any indication of how long homeless people will be allowed to stay, or even if they could, some of them could stay on because they might not be able to, hotels might only be allowed to have certain numbers of people in. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts at the moment. I think, yeah, the hotels are trying to be as reasonable as they can, but they have other drivers to why they're there, of course. And that's why the City Council and St Mungo's are working really hard behind the scenes to try and engage other landlords too, particularly. And the colleges, you know, they're trying to step up where they can. It's been really nice to see as part of this response around the accommodation needs. But yeah, it's just everybody's got to try and bring together a whole suite of different different accommodation options very quickly across the county. But yeah, the will is there locally, and when you've got a platform like the movement to enable collaboration, then you know, there couldn't have been a better time, at least for Oxfordshire, to respond.
Do the hotels get paid for? Are they being paid for the homeless, and is that coming from the government or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not involved in the transactions, but yeah, my understanding is that they're not doing too badly. But there's a central and local government arrangement.
Right. Well, it's fantastic to hear, and I would love to come and sort of spend a half day with you and actually see what you're doing, yeah, I'd love to come and see the premises that you're hoping to develop as well, actually. If
it'd be really nice to give you a tour, and perhaps you can help us open it.
Oh, even better. Oh my gosh. An invitation.
Yes,
I can wear my hat, exactly. That would be very exciting.
Amanda, just to pick up on your question around affordable housing, which I thought was a really pertinent one. Of course, the real solution to the crisis that we were facing long before COVID is building more truly affordable housing, and that's as relevant to someone experiencing homelessness as it is someone who's precariously housed or just on a minimum wage job, and really that's the answer. And that's really where we've been failing over the recent years, some would say decades. But there's a turn in the tide on that front. We're seeing the council taking a lead on this. Oxford City Council is doing a fantastic job. It's got a pipeline of 4,000 homes coming over the coming decades, which will be meeting policy. So 40% of those will be social rented, which is truly affordable. But of course, we've got this current crisis. We've got this need now. We've got the people who are very precariously housed, unable to afford the bottom rung of the rental market, and some who've fallen into experiencing homelessness. And that's really where solutions like the project that Paul's talking about comes in. You know, this is what we call move on accommodation, but not so much in the kind of statutory definition as part of the pathway, but more as that interim step to provide a safety net, but not just provide a bedsit or a shelter, but provide a temporary home where you can get your life back on track, where you can forge links with your neighbours, with your cohabitants, with the local community. Because what we're seeing is many of those who've been caught, thankfully, by the response of putting people into hotels, which, by the way, has demonstrated that Oxford can actually solve homelessness overnight.
Yes.
What we're seeing is there's a real potential for everyone, as you mentioned, to be pushed back on the street when those stays end. But really, the main need of the vast majority of those people is housing. You know, they're not what the sector often calls complex needs. They are low to no needs who really just need to get back with a stable job, or a slight increase in income. And that's where move on accommodation can be so key, and can be a real catalyst to solving the longer term problem.
Well, that's very encouraging to hear that the councils are actually recognising this. So you're obviously doing a great job engaging with them, and
it's a big hill to climb, but yeah, it's on the right
track. Big
track.
hill to climb. So where do you think that leaves us, Amanda? I mean, I think for me, there's just a huge amount that's going on, and we started today saying that we would like the Community Foundation and our Resilience Fund to focus more on the recovery, and I hope that everyone will have heard there is so much good work actually already being done about how can we use the current situation to take forward some ideas, which I think, you know, Andy said sort of so well there. This is about creating a safety net. You know, this is the chance for people to be having a real opportunity to be able to move on with their lives. And I think if we keep that all in our mind, some of the things that I've heard that keep coming out today is the need for partnership working, the need for involving individuals with experience in the problems that we're trying to solve, putting them at the heart of everything that we're trying to do is absolutely so critical. But as Monawar began at the beginning, involving younger people, the younger volunteers, people that are motivated and really are going to be around to make a difference for a long time is, I think it's been really inspiring. And I would love to hear from, you know, there's been over 40 participants on the call, and I'm sure Amanda would as well. Do you like the idea of a theme? Today we've tried to focus it very much on homelessness and the work that we're doing within the Oxford Homeless Movement. I think that was even a suggestion from Andy on an earlier webinar, so we do take ideas forward. But you know, how we can actually make them so that if you've got a particular interest in educational disadvantage, you know, we can bring groups together on that topic and see where there is opportunities to really build some of these solutions, because I think that's the only way the sector is actually going to recover, and we want to put our funds to enable it to do that. So we're very excited about the project bringing on the housing, and the webinars with Amanda, meeting groups that she can't. Someone's written in the chat box, Amanda, this is your physically distanced meetings that you're having, you know, over the virtual world. So
great.
I don't know if anyone has any questions for Amanda or any of the speakers that we've heard from today, but you know, thank you all. Themes are good, it's coming up. Digital inclusion, I think, in IT is another one, which seems to be, I know from the applications that we're seeing, that is a really big thing. And I think Paul used a very nice term. You said there's a digital deficit within the sector, and I think that's probably very true. So really ideas around the themes. If you are a charity and there's sort of topics that you want to know, are there others that perhaps work with you? That would be really good.
Hi, can I ask a question?
You can ask a question, Simon.
I just want to ask Paul and Andy, especially about the Airbnb, because obviously the hotels don't have any tourists coming. But I know, you know, we did a bit of a research project with the students, and there's an awful lot of Airbnb flats and houses in Oxford in particular, and I presume a lot of them are not being used. And I know Airbnb, the organisation, has been sort of pushing some of their landowners to actually, you know, free some of their properties up, especially for key workers, but you know, also homeless people. And I just wondered whether there was any mileage in you know, dealing with those properties.
I think one thing that we're looking at, and there are models of this being successfully implemented in other parts of the country, but not in Oxfordshire, is not Airbnb, but a social enterprise lettings type offer to landlords. So landlords want a professional service. A lot of landlords do have goodwill and want to engage with adults experiencing homelessness, but so it's getting that sort of that balance right. And you look at, there's some great examples in Scotland, in Bristol, Bath, London, of a social enterprise lettings approach. So it's sort of, it's not supported housing, it really isn't that. But it is acknowledging that there does need to be some support there. So yeah, and you know, dare I say, it's got some of the better bits of Airbnb perhaps involved in the model. So I think that's something I personally am really interested in, and I am looking to explore and seeing what might that model look like in Oxford and Oxfordshire. I think there will, as I said earlier, I think there will be landlords struggling to find tenants and wanting to engage with tenants that perhaps they will have overlooked previously, but maybe with a bit of hand-holding and a bit of support, we can really do something quite different.
I wonder if there'll be a change of shift with, I mean, having had children who've been through university, the one thing I was appalled was the amount of rent one had to pay for a child at university for her accommodation, which was, and one felt that actually there were quite a lot of landlords out there who were just very, very greedy, and what they got was very, very basic. And, but if universities don't go back, there are going to be many houses in, you know, any university city or town, aren't they? Including Oxford. You know, for a whole year.
The Cambridge University said very recently that they're shifting all of their provision online for the next academic year. I don't know what's happening with the university.
Well, that's what exactly. So there are a lot of landlords who are going to have an empty house, and some rent is better than it might also benefit students in the future, because they might realise that they could get by with charging slightly less rent.
Can I ask a question, Jayne?
Yeah, James.
I'll switch on my camera so you can see the ugly mug. I was just wondering, Paul and Andy, on the basis that I would hate to be the person having to tell somebody who is currently lodging in a hotel that their time is up and they're back on the street, especially if they're rough sleepers and have come from a life of chaos. So how quickly does your model enable a kind of a portfolio of properties to be made available so that they don't ever have to go back to their old living ways?
I think we've got to be realistic about demand and supply here. You know, we're talking about 150 people in the hotel settings at the moment, and we're trying to bring online by properties, by the way, which we were looking at before, you know, of course, the housing crisis existed long before the pandemic did. So we've been trying to bring this online for some time, and obviously now trying to accelerate it. But I think this is why the movement becomes important, but also the movement needs to look beyond the city boundaries, because there's a lot more housing stock in the county, and it's engaging with housing associations and district councils, encouraging and enabling them to step up their commitments too, because that's where the stock is. And also working with people in those settings in Oxford and saying, you know, there may not be opportunities for everybody in Oxford, but hopefully there are opportunities, decent accommodation opportunities as well, with caring landlords who have the right cultural position of social housing providers, you know, for them in the county.
Yeah. Okay, excellent, thanks.
Yeah, I think you're right, James. Ideally, we'd have a pipeline of homes ready to go in response to this situation, and it's something that many groups have been working on for years. And it's really interesting that it's taken, unfortunately, COVID and a pandemic to catalyse to turn this project into action, because it's been in gestation for a number of years. And we really need to build up a momentum and a head of steam so that we are constantly bringing more homes and bedrooms online, so that when acute situations like this do happen, and were already happening, that we can respond very quickly to that. And so, yeah, the social lettings, I think creative responses such as using Airbnb, you know, having those tricky conversations about under occupancy, because Oxford has one of the highest levels of under occupancy in certain areas. So we don't have a space problem, we just have a distribution problem when it comes to homes and bedrooms.
Okay, Andy, I think that's a really good way to end it, actually, because it's talking about Oxfordshire. We've been delighted to have the High Sheriff of Oxfordshire asking the questions and interviewing you all, but I think also it just points to the fact that Oxford and Oxfordshire, you know, have great movements, and movements need support and to be invested. And as Andy said, when something happens, then at least we're ready to actually make the most of everything that we've been doing. So I think we've just to keep doing all the work that we're doing, and actually let's deliver on it. So that's and it's really good to hear from, as we say, from Monawar, Kat, Andy and Paul, and very much so from Amanda. Thank you once again, and do join us again in 2 weeks' time, and we'll have another lineup for you, and do check our website for all the details. But if you wanted to send a calendar invite, email me and we'll make sure that you get a calendar invite so you never lose it in your diary. I think that was one of the things from this afternoon. It's becoming obvious you need it in your diary. Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone.